Welcome back to another YouTube cast here, guys. I'm Wardy, here on WardiTV, and we have got a TvT for you today. We don't usually cast the mirror matchups when we do YouTube casts, but as I've been saying over the last couple of videos or so, we kind of don't have much to cast right now. We don't have much to upload from the stream, so we're just digging away and trying to see what we can find. And, well, we found this one. In the top right-hand side, our red Terran player from Sidestone Gaming is GuMiho. And in the bottom left, our blue Terran player from Pixelon is FanTaSy. This series from the Alpha Pro Series Ultimate Showdown Group A lower match. And we've been casting pretty much the entirety of this group. We're going to cast the next match of this tomorrow as well for the YouTube. Again, just don't have much on the stream right now because of some internet issues last week. So we're just, it's also kind of my monthly break. So yeah, we're just taking a couple of days to cast these replays and just kind of keep that coming out. As we get into this TvT, just as we get going, you guys know what I'm going to say. Don't forget to like the video, helps us out a whole bunch in that YouTube algorithm. And of course, you can comment in the comment section, let us know what you think of the games, let us know who you might want to see playing some games in the future. And don't forget as well, last but not least, that subscribe button to see when we upload once per day. All of it helps us out to keep on growing the YouTube channel and putting out more of this content for you all. So thank you so much if you are checking that out. As we do see the barracks coming up here, let's get this going. This TvT is already seeing some differences. The double gas from GuMiho, as we see the single gas from FanTaSy. So for FanTaSy, this is a nice fast expansion. Reaper expand, kind of surprised about no SCV scout. Typically with the Reaper expand off of one gas here, you will SCV scout at least just to check if it's a proxy 2-Rex Reaper or not. So not SCV scout at all. FanTaSy playing very greedy. Now GuMiho will go into his factory, and as he does so, pulls out of gas entirely. This puts maximum SCVs on the minerals and keeps the mineral income good, so you can take an expansion down on the low ground over here, which is kind of what we're expecting to happen in the next few moments. So there's a couple of SCVs mining away in the refinery, some on the minerals. We do see one Reaper from GuMiho starting to head down to the bottom left-hand side. Reaper coming up. Factory is about to finish, and just going to be seeing the factory here going to be finishing up very shortly as well. Depot into the side, as you do see the Reaper of FanTaSy is going to get some damage done, throwing off a couple of shots, and is going to continue to chase out to the top side. Wow, GuMiho, his Reaper is super low, has to take a turn, has to jump. Would have died jumping down anyways, so nice from FanTaSy. Picks up the first Reaper. That's really good for him, especially because he's not only going, a bit greedier, he's going super greedy. He's gone Reactor into the Hellion production now. But it means that he didn't build a second Reaper, so to already offset the count or the advantage of GuMiho by a Reaper, it's so nice for him as he goes into the economy-focused game here. So that's really, really nice. That's really awesome to see as we do see this. Reaper is about to pop up. Factory finishing a tech lab. Starport about halfway done as well. This SCV will go down. There's a couple of Marines coming to the low ground off of that Reactor. I mean, there is a Hellion for FanTaSy. Did he cancel? No, where's the Hellion? Oh, sorry. It's right there, literally under your nose. Come on, Woody. You could have seen that. Yeah, Hellion's right there. I mean, that should help to defend as well. So not really much to be done here. Obviously, the one SCV kill, but that should be about it. This Reaper perhaps in some trouble too. Again, by the time this Reaper goes down and these units get aggressive again for GuMiho, FanTaSy should have the numbers up to be able to still make this work out. You can see, I mean, the more he runs around in circles here, the longer he keeps these units away from his base. And now we're talking about multiple Marines, a Hellion, Raven on the way out. He should be safe against any sort of a push forwards, especially considering he did kill off an initial Reaper. The Cyclone might make that a little bit more tricky. But overall, I think with the Raven on the way, right, it's going to be just about in time. You can drop a turret down, you can Matrix if you want to, depending on what you feel the scenario requires. And FanTaSy is maintaining just a couple of SCVs advantage throughout all of this with that earlier command center. So FanTaSy maintaining a little bit of the economy lead here. As the Hellion, 2 Reapers and a Cyclone are going to come in from the top side. Marines and a Hellion from FanTaSy will start to pull back a little bit. That lock-on was good for a moment, and you can see the Raven is kind of sitting out, waiting to see what it can do. Hellion is going to go down. Marines trying to fight here, and actually more trouble than expected, I think. That Cyclone really adding a lot on, but this is why FanTaSy wasn't using the Raven. If he really, really wanted to, he could have dropped something from the Raven there to make this a lot easier. Wow, what a lock-on as he was flying through the sky. Cyclone gets another Reaper kill. This is why FanTaSy was waiting with the Raven, because if he waited for that Cyclone, he doesn't have to use any Raven energy. Now he's got full Raven energy, or max Raven energy for when he built the Raven, basically. So that's obviously really nice. He has a couple of Marines on the way out. Siege tank about to pop. Raven is coming in as well. FanTaSy coming out the front as we do see the command center dropping in on third base. So again, that ready to roll here. That CC up and running as the third CC of GuMiho dropping down in the front in the center of the map. A couple extra Marines from GuMiho going to pop out here as well. They're going to be coming towards the front. Siege Tank 2. And that stim pack from FanTaSy still just sneaking its way up there in these early stages as we do see this army. Raven Marine tank and a Cyclone all pressing forwards. Two more Vikings coming out into production as we see GuMiho is still sitting out in the center. Command center is about to finish up here, and yeah, I mean, 3cc in a bit of a different spot from GuMiho than it is for FanTaSy. By taking this base, he's got the rich Vespine Geyser. That mines out really fast because he can obviously just mine it with 3 workers, but it's going to bring the gas in twice as quickly. So it's essentially like having 2 Vespine gases with 2 sets of workers on it. Obviously, the difference is you don't have to have an extra set of workers, but it will mine out faster. So that forward position typically in TvT is quite, for any Terran matchup really, it's quite nice to hold because you want to push forwards, and that's kind of how the Terran attacks work. You start pushing forwards and you keep pushing forwards, just don't stop. As you see, a little bit of a fight's going to break out here. Auto turret central. Hey, that Raven of FanTaSy actually went down without dropping too many auto turrets there. That's kind of costly, and there's an auto turret in the back. GuMiho just got way better auto turrets in this fight, and he cleans up with ease. Takes down all the tanks of FanTaSy. The Raven's going down on both sides. GuMiho even has a Viking left in the sky, though, and will keep pushing forwards. Now, there was just the one Raven of FanTaSy that got taken down before it could drop its auto turrets, and that makes the difference. If it gets 2 more auto turrets off, these tanks die. It does. It makes that much of a difference. Well, now FanTaSy might be able to hold the high ground here, but GuMiho will definitely have the momentum already to start pushing forwards and to keep pushing forwards. And just a couple of tanks pressing in. You see FanTaSy's tank pulling back a little bit. A few Marines hanging out. Vikings still overhead. Tanks will unsiege from GuMiho and push a bit further forward. It's a nice position from FanTaSy. He's going to come in and fight, and there was one of the Vikings landed somehow. FanTaSy still loses that fight. This tank fight here to try and save the day, but he was actually hitting Marines initially, and now, well, it's going to get a little bit tricky for him again. He could land the Vikings on the tanks, but there's but one tank in the background and will kill them. As now FanTaSy starts to lose SCVs in the mineral line, so GuMiho getting a lot done here. FanTaSy in some trouble. Across the map, he's got Liberated, which will at least deal some damage while he's taking damage of his own, but that's only going to last so long. He's going to unsiege that and relocate it for another time. FanTaSy still have his Vikings up. Did he lose those? We just lost 1 or 2 of them during this fight. I think maybe he tried to land on the tanks or something. Oh my god, this one Viking of GuMiho comes over and is going to get some damage done, but the repair is good, and that should be a dead Viking. Oh my god. And the siege tank comes in with the Marine, and the tank goes down anyways. Now the SCVs just chase in. That's 5 more SCVs. FanTaSy is just falling apart right now. GuMiho is just all over him. What a way for this game to just, well, really avalanche from just nothing into everything. Because suddenly GuMiho is all over the place, and FanTaSy is struggling, bleeding off units here and there, and that's the issue, I guess. You start bleeding off a couple of units once you're already a bit behind. It becomes very difficult to hold on to, right? As he does at least clean out one of these tanks here. He gets a Viking as well. Now he's going to lose his Viking on the high ground. He's still losing everything on the third base, though. So GuMiho is just keeping on cleaning up. And FanTaSy, how do you fight back against this now? That tank of GuMiho is going to fall. So that's going to be a cleanup there as well. 19 SCVs, 20 SCVs lost. And again, the Liberator came back in for a few more workers, but now being cleaned up by those Marines. So a few more workers going down. FanTaSy does have 1-1 a bit faster, but what does that matter? It doesn't feel like he can make this happen at all. Marines will push and kill that Orbital in the next couple of moments. Orbital is very low. It's just surviving for the moment. Marines now unloading on these tanks. One Marine's pushing in, one Viking going down. GuMiho is going to start getting cleaned up. He was spread pretty thinly here, right? I mean, a lot of his units over on that right-hand side as well. And FanTaSy does engage for that 1-1 timing, so you know, FanTaSy survives, but does he survive in any sort of playable position? Third CC down, I think, is the biggest sort of big, fat, absolute no way of this game, because what do you do without a third CC here? You're pretty much forced all into a player who has equal upgrades, better production, has had a better economy for longer. Now, it's going to be very tough here. FanTaSy needs a hell of a fight. He does have a siege tank advantage. Oh, he's going to wander into a siege tank fire here. That's not good. That Viking kind of drew him in, and now his tanks are on siege to fight back. GuMiho decides to disengage though. I'm kind of surprised. He actually had more Marines and the tanks were at siege. I mean, that should be a fight every single time. Those Marines going to unload from the medevacs as the scan came down. Saw the medevacs heading up towards the top. GuMiho has good vision though. Missile turret too, so actually he's not too afraid of those medevacs. So if if they are coming in, they are pretty much going to be seen. So he doesn't have to overcommit back towards his main, and that's so important. Not having to overcommit back home means he can stay on the map, and so if the units are still in the middle of the map, boom, GuMiho can be here and ready to fight it. Yeah, no way FanTaSy takes this fight. Tank was already sieged. He has last Marines. He needs his tanks to put in absolute work here when this fight happens. As he is going to come try and go around the right side. GuMiho still goes into 2-2 upgrades. FanTaSy will as well, so he's not completely... I mean, that's kind of weird to me though, right? Because he's on 2 bases. I guess he could maybe think about lifting up the main base and relocating. But typically in this position, FanTaSy should feel like he's very all in which case, in what world does he survive the 2 minutes to get 2-2 upgrades up and running? Well, very rarely, put it that way. And by the time, 2 minutes passes and your opponent's been in an extra base ahead, any sort of upgrade advantage is not worthwhile, right? You would have, it's going to be offset by the economy lead. And he starts building a third CC, I guess in a way. So if FanTaSy's mindset is, I can't win this game with a push right now, I guess his mindset becomes, well, maybe I can stay on the map and look for openings, but I'm going to have to prepare for this game to go a bit longer. Even if that's not necessarily a great idea for me, it's better than not winning right, here and now if I can't win here and now. So it's definitely a possibility too. Tanks and Marines. Alpha over to the right side. A couple of Marines will stem on forwards. Marines from GuMiho coming back down as well. Bit of back and forth here between the two of them. We're seeing more Marines of FanTaSy down the bottom left-hand side. A couple of medevacs setting up as well. Plus 1 vehicle weapons on the armory. The tank of FanTaSy also going to siege up. I mean, again, FanTaSy's on the map, and that's always a good thing in TvT. Map control and being on the map gives you the chance to be the first player to backstab, for example. Can be the player to initiate the base trade, which could give you a bit of a heads up, a hand, a little bit of a leg over. It gives you, there's a lot of different ways to kind of get back with map control. So while FanTaSy's down 20 army supply, I don't mind how this has turned out, because now his third base is back up and running. Yeah, okay, maybe he's still struggling here and there, but he does have 5 racks, same as GuMiho. Let's see what GuMiho's going to do here. This is the thing. FanTaSy, for having the map control, should never have allowed GuMiho to come across the map like this. Right? This is the exact sort of scenario where FanTaSy should have had the upper hand, but GuMiho's just pushed straight across, and FanTaSy, for having the map control, didn't actually have the map control, right? He should have had a Marine over here so you could see this army moving out. I mean, yes, now he can maybe backstab, but look how late it is, right? 2 tanks are now coming into position. They weren't there a couple minutes ago. If FanTaSy, saw this attack coming in, he could have instantly dove for the backstab. And that could have been a base for a base. And then you start putting this game into a very weird kind of who could trade better sort of scenario. Unfortunately, FanTaSy feels like he had some of the right ideas here, but it's just not quite going to work out for him in the end. The execution was like a little bit off. Would have just loved to see again a couple more Marines around the map. He just couldn't let GuMiho get away with the kind of the push across the map without him seeing what was going on. That was meant to be FanTaSy's advantage, and GuMiho took it into an advantage of his own and punished FanTaSy for being on the map. And yeah, when you're behind this FanTaSy, if GuMiho is punishing you even further, it's obviously not going to be pretty. FanTaSy is trying to reinforce up through the center, but his army is looking rather pitiful now. While it looked just a little bit small before, now it really looks as though, what on earth are you going to get done with this? I mean, 4 siege tanks on that high ground, even that position feels unbreakable. These 2 tanks over here, more reinforcements are even yet to be brought into play. Vikings are able to kill a medevac as we see 3-3 upgrades coming in from GuMiho. More Marines down the left-hand side. FanTaSy should be ready to respond. Has some Marines there as well, which will get picked off. These SCVs are going to keep on dropping. And we're going to see him attempting. I mean, he will break this tank line only because the Marines have gone across the map on a dealing insane amounts of damage, right? GuMiho's like, okay, well, kill my 4 siege tanks. I've just killed 22 SCVs and probably your natural command center. He's not really too worried about losing the 4 siege tanks there as, pushing forwards here. FanTaSy's going to try go for it, but there's Liberators plenty to deal with the tanks, and there's a Viking count in favor of GuMiho too. GuMiho took a big lead in this game, and FanTaSy played a couple of cool ways to try and get back in, but ultimately just didn't play it well enough to properly be back into that game, giving GuMiho the game number 1 of this best of 3. So GuMiho picks up game 1, and we're going to be jumping into a game number 2 in a couple moments' time. We'll be back with more in just a second. Disco Bloodbath. This map has been so popular in the best of 3 series. It has very regularly found itself being picked as one of the maps to make it into these best of threes. And it says a lot about the map, you know, whenever a map gets picked regularly. I would say it really says, you know, hey, this is a good map, people seem to like it. There isn't one particular race that says, no way, I'm not playing Disco Bloodbath Insta-Veto. So yeah, always nice to see this one coming up. It was one of my favorites when it was in the Team Liquid map contest tournament as well, so always nice to see. As we have in the bottom right-hand side, our blue Terran player from Storm Gaming. Give it up if you're cheering on GuMiho. As he's taking on the red Terran player in the top left-hand side from Pixel 1 FanTaSy. Coming into game number 2 of this best of 3 now. As we set this up, we get this started here in our little saga of YouTube casts again, casting YouTube exclusives every day for the next couple of days until we get some more stream content up. Just want to say thank you guys for putting up with me and obviously watching again. I like to give you guys a little updates. It's weird because I know YouTube people don't usually try and talk to their viewers, but I like to because I'm a Twitch streamer at heart, right? So it's hard for me to get it out of me. But the YouTube has been doing really, really well. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been tuning in and watching the videos. You guys rock! It's been really awesome to see the progress, and I really do feed myself off of success, I guess, because the success of the YouTube makes me motivated to do even more YouTube, you know, and that was kind of the problem for the last few months. It's like, oh, it's so hard to find the time to do YouTube content, and, you know, at the end of the day, you know what? You just man up, Wardy, you just do the YouTube content, and people watch it. That's what it comes down to, so thank you guys for being supportive, and glad that you guys are indeed continuing to enjoy. SCV of FanTaSy goes into the main base as the factory dropping down. A Reaper is about to pop out from GuMiho, is going to be heading out onto the map, so we'll see where that's going to go, as it's going to jump straight on towards this SCV here. So SCV taking that little bit of damage. SCV going down as the factory is about to complete. Reaper is about halfway done here. Hellion on the way up on the factory as well. I'm just going to be seeing the double refinery going to be finishing up here now as the command center drops down from FanTaSy in the Naturals. Again, that command center up and running. We do see this Reaper from GuMiho is already kind of pressing forwards here and is going to go for a little bit of damage down on towards this SCV. Looking for the kill. Gets it with the grenade. 2 Reapers of FanTaSy are going to be able to clean it up, but yeah, this game, FanTaSy again, is kind of one gas expanded in towards the... This time he didn't build a reactor right away. He built a second Reaper. I think last game I guess last game he was already building the reactor pretty early, but he was obviously very confident about his ability to defend anyways. GuMiho is again same build, right? Racks, you know, gas racks, double gas early. CC that little bit later. He's actually going to go straight into a Cyclone, by the way. Only one Hellion this time around, so real fast Cyclone here. And the Starport only really has the gas to build a Viking early game, unless he waits for the medevac. Oh, he's going to wait a little bit longer. He actually cancels the Cyclone and goes into a Siege Tank. Okay, so there's going to be a medevac out of GuMiho. So canceling the Cyclone actually gives you not really gas back when you build a Siege Tank instead. But then, you know, he's going to build a medevac as well, so it looks like it's going to be like a Marine Tank drop. We'll see. Usually, typically, these are strongest when you go double Marine Tank drop, because you'll have 2 tanks, 2 medevacs, 8 Marines, and that just does so much better dropping off and sieging, especially, than kind of 4 Marines and 1 tank. But of course, a lot of that depends on kind of the timing of the game as well. Let's see what happens here. Second tank lines up in production immediately. We've subbed a couple of Marines. Yeah, it's going to be 4 Marines and 1 tank to begin with. Obviously, I guess it is quite powerful if you then have, you know, 4 Marines and 1 tank going elsewhere at the same time, because then you do have to split your army up a bit as FanTaSy. Too early in this game is just sending his first 2 Reapers forwards. His own Siege Tank on the way. Bunker at the front is good, should keep him safe, and the Raven should give him some kind of clearing potential on the Siege Tank in the main base. Let's find out, because this is it. GuMiho is about to drop into the back of this main. 4 Marines, 1 Siege Tank, going to be beginning to unload. Couple SCVs already starting to take some damage, has to pull away instantly there. First SCV drops down. A couple of Reaper grenades and tanks get bopped backwards just a little bit there as the Raven coming in, looking to drop down an auto turret, and well, it will scare this, you know, first medevac away. There's another medevac ready to go, and yeah, you would expect this to kind of join up with first. I was thinking about maybe kind of going 2 different places, but the fact that this first one's been picked up and evacuated rather than cleaned out, it kind of makes sense for the next one to just then join up, because again, 2 tanks together this early in the game can get a lot done. And right now, I mean, the supply depot goes down. That would be supply block for FanTaSy, which is kind of a big deal. Does save the Reaper grenade being dodged there. Where is our other medevac? It is. It did load up. It just hasn't actually moved across onto the map. Oh, he's waiting for a third medevac. Wow. So GuMiho's really committing to this early aggression. So he's going to have 3 medevacs, 3 tanks, a bunch of marines. Again, I think he's just going to join them up together and go for one big drop into the main. Right now, this siege tank here, for example, is very vulnerable. I mean, now it's on siege, right? So if you can start dropping and get a bit of a heads up on the siege, that's huge as well. GuMiho about to go into this here. I love that. Reaper, it would have soaked up a siege tank shot and allowed him to get the siege initially, the siege advantage initially, which would have been kind of a big play. Obviously, there was no siege up, so it wasn't as important, perhaps. I was going to see one of these tanks here might now go down. The Raven on the way back from FanTaSy is going to have an interference matrix. He's going to be able to kill one siege tank here, but GuMiho is going to go and drop a tank on top of this tank. So FanTaSy is still taking damage. She's already lost 10 SCVs. The problem is GuMiho pretty much has to fight here because nice matrix saves the tank. He has to fight here because if he doesn't fight here, his problem becomes the fact that he's obviously going to lose his main base. So GuMiho forces the fight essentially. Now FanTaSy will start to clean up. A couple tanks cleaned out, and there's just marines left in those medevacs. FanTaSy only down by 6 workers, all said and done. Third CC already morphed into an orbital, can lift that up and put that into position here. GuMiho built his in position, so saves himself a few seconds of flying around. Medevacs coming down through the center now. Liberator in production here from FanTaSy as this medevac goes across in toward the main. A couple extra marines coming down as well. Viking looking to chase, and the medevac is really heading out of there. So medevac is off and away. 2 more engineering bays from FanTaSy as well, getting those set up. So yeah, getting a couple of engineering bays up and running. +1 armor, +1 attack. Combat shields. I mean, you can see GuMiho's advantage that he has built behind this with the slight eco advantage that he had. The engineering bays are down and upgrading. I mean, engineering bays are down from FanTaSy, but where are the upgrades? Non-existent. FanTasy's actually building a Liberator, which is, I feel, very expensive at this stage, because he would kind of want to be building upgrades, etc. I mean, he's got no Viking count either, so that Liberator is purely for harassment. I mean, I guess the Liberator in the last game did pick up a good few kills. We now see 2 medevacs loading up from FanTaSy, might come across this top side and go for some counter pressure, but again, similar story to game 1. GuMiho has found early damage, he found an early advantage, and you know what? It's going to be the same thing again. GuMiho's just going to be running in while FanTaSy's completely out of position. You know, at least this time FanTaSy has drops coming across, but then Vikings are going to find these medevacs, and there goes the 2 tanks, there goes the marines in the medevacs, and there goes the 3rd CC flying back into the main base. Well, that is absolutely the moment where you just GG out of this. There is no way you want to stick around in a game like that one, as GuMiho takes game number 2 and the series, which means that tomorrow's YouTube video, guys, will be GuMiho versus Zest. We actually casted GuMiho Zest the first time they played in this group, so that's going to be a rematch, and that'll be tomorrow's YouTube videos. We just continue, as I've mentioned before, to work our way through these matches from this Alpha Pro Series Ultimate Showdown. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. Really do hope you enjoyed a little bit of TvT, the rare mirror matchup that we upload to the channel. I think it was fun. It wasn't, like I say, I'm kind of struggling for replays, so it wasn't the greatest series ever, but, you know, it keeps the uploads coming, which, for the moment, is what's important. So, with that said, guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.